Tarpon is arguably Southwest Florida's favorite sport fish. It's a prehistoric animal, world-renowned for its size and fighting ability when hooked. Every year they come by the thousands to the Boca Grande Pass to feed before spawning. But right now something is killing them, and it has nothing to do with predators. In tonight's cover story, ABC 7's Alex Howard is showing us how an illegal way of catching tarpon is putting one of the world's most famous fish at risk.
That's the bottom, that solid red line. That's all tarpon, so they're 20 feet thick.
This pass holds some of the deepest inshore water in all of Southwest Florida, reaching depths of up to 70 feet deep. It becomes the perfect highway for our area's favorite sport fish.
Oh my God! Tarpon come to Boca Grande Pass as it's fish themselves on food.
As fourth-generation charter fisherman Steve Hutch explained, there's nowhere else in the country that holds this many fish at a time.
Tarpon tend to feed more when the tide's running, and then they would go into what we call a rest period. They would just stack up by the hundreds and just lay there.
That's where something called jigging becomes a problem. It's a technique that uses a weighted fishing lure called a jig. Jigging is usually used to trick fish into biting. Anglers jerk the lure up and down to mimic an injured bait fish's erratic swimming style. But anglers who know these waters say that's not what's happening in the Boca Grande Pass.
So they designed this hook method for drifting through a large school of tarpon and catching them on the side fins, the gill plates, underneath the jaws, anything that's protruding.
And so there's no food motivation for tarpon to eat something like this.
If you were tarpon, would you eat that?
These fishermen asked us not to show their faces on camera, but say recently they've noticed fishermen, even charter captains in the past, using jigs like this to foul hook tarpon.
Pretty bad when you gotta hide that shit, huh? What you got in your hand right there?
It's basically a big chunk of lead that they've formed around a big circle hook with a little curly tail, paddle tail jig on it. It's meant to get around the law that you can't have the weight below the hook, which you can see it does. If you give it a quick jerk, it's held on by a rubber band. And the other loophole is that the lead doesn't break away because it's attached by another piece of line.
Depending on where it's hooked, this practice can kill the fish, a protected species in the state of Florida.
When you hook a fish from the face, you can turn the head and bring it to him. When you've hooked him in the side or the tail, now you're bringing the fish in backwards, and the fight is prolonged.
And while the jig is banned by the state, fishermen here say a lack of enforcement has caused some fishermen to ignore the law, leading to dead tarpon washing up on the beach.
But it needs to be enforced. The fines need to be high enough that nobody wants to go in Boca Grande Pass with a jig in their boat with them or attached to a rod.
In the hopes that this prehistoric fish is still here for generations to come.
It's a catch and release, so it's endless how long we can hold them. You know, with water quality and food, they're prehistoric. And I think if they're protected and looked after, my great-great-grandchildren will catch them here in Boca Grande Pass.
And late this afternoon, we heard back from FWC about this issue. They told us that the penalty for using an illegal jig would be a misdemeanor charge if someone was caught with it. FWC also says that Boca Grande Pass is a high-priority patrol area during the tarpon run, which is May through July, and that officers are constantly looking for prohibited gear and other boating violations there. Reporting in studio, Alex Howard, ABC 7.